In today's video we're going to be diving into some more Elden Ring Nightreign, and for this one we're going to be going over the absolute monster that is the Raider. There are a whole bunch of character classes in this game, all with some great attributes about them, but if you are after being the biggest bruiser of the bunch, an absolute monster of a man, then the Raider may be a perfect choice for you. For this one, I'm going to be making a build for him that you should be able to put together quite easily once you start getting some relics about yourself, and the great thing about this is that you'll be able to start off with Eruption, as you'll be able to use it as a kind of starting perk on one of your relics, allowing you to do a lot of damage and have a lot of fun from the very start of the game. Now just so you know, I usually use this in team play, so I haven't tried it out in solo, so think of this as a group play build, but I'd imagine it probably works quite well in solo as well, once you start getting things going and picking up right items and such. Now remember, with Raider, the main thing to focus on is everything he's good at the start, so stick with his attributes that you know he's going to be powerful with. He's got absolutely amazing HP, I believe it's the second highest in the game, just a little bit under Guardian, and as well as that, his stamina's at A, so it's great to have a nice amount of that because you will be doing some heavy swings with him very often with your Great Axe, and of course his S scaling in strength is absolutely amazing, the highest currently in the game, meaning he can dish out a lot of damage with his axe, especially if you get some really lucky drops enhancing your damage overall. Now remember, you're going to be using your starter axe, so you're going to want to upgrade that, get it all the way to purple in order to enhance its damage, but a few things to note about the Raider is going to be his abilities and how you should be using them. After playing with the Raider for quite some time, one thing you'll notice is that you want to be right in the line of fire because he's got some crazy damage negation, helping him with a whole bunch of tankiness, and of course his passive ability, Fighter's Resolve, actually revolves around taking damage because it's going to boost your character's skill, which is going to be your Retaliate, and it's also going to allow you to not get knocked down whenever you're using it as well. So poise isn't really going to be a factor as long as you're using your character skill. Speaking of the character skill, probably one of my top favourite ones in the game, Retaliate, if you're timing this right, can do some really great effects, especially when it staggers and knocks down the big enemies. This can allow your team to dish out some crazy damage or just give you a little breather in the process. Most times though, you will want to initiate this whenever the enemies are going to hit you with an attack, and even if you time it wrong, the really good thing about this is that you mitigate, I'd probably say, about 95% of the damage. If you can get some skill cooldown on this, that's going to be absolutely ideal, because the more you're using this, the more damage negation you're going to get, and the more chance of breaking enemy stances and knocking them down in general. The other really nice move about him, but one I will have to go over, is going to be his ultimate art, and this one's going to be your Totem Stellar, which is going to see you bringing up an absolutely massive monolith from the ground, enabling you to do some stagger damage or sometimes knock down the enemies as well, but as well as that, it's also going to give you an area buff for yourself and your team, so it's well worth having up whenever you can, especially on those kind of tough encounters or tricky fights. But one thing I would say, after playing with this character for a very long time, even though this is personally one of my favourite moves in the game, it's also one of, I'd say, the probably most frustrating. You're going to want to coordinate this with your team, make sure you're not getting in the way of them, because if you use it at the right time it can be very helpful, but if you use it at the wrong time it can actually destroy the flow of combat, or in fact get in the way of some of your teammates' damage. I've done this before and had one of my friends just completely screw up his Wilder ultimate because he couldn't even get through the rock to hit the enemy, or on another occasion I done it on a Barbarian Hunter, and because he got stuck in the middle of it he then powered up his move. We couldn't hit him, he absolutely decimated us, and it proved to be fatal to use this ultimate rather than leave it alone. If you think you're going to get in the way of anyone, just make sure you use the ultimate a little bit away from the enemy so that you get the area buff for you and your team, or use it just on the outside of them so you can knock them forward rather than completely encase them. Now remember, when you're doing the actual remembrance quest for this character, you're going to unlock a few things, including some really great relics for him, so it's definitely worth doing. If you need to know how to do that, I've got a guide on the channel, but it's quite an easy one, so just make sure you go over to his journal and you should be okay as long as you've completed a few Night Lords. Doing this will also make sure he unlocks his special chalice that's going to have 2 red slots and 1 white slot at the very end. You may want to use this one, but it's all going to be dependent on what modifiers are rolled for what relics for you. Now one thing I would recommend, because you're going to be using your starting weapon, try to get to a mine very early on, that way you'll be able to get a purple upgrade very quickly. Just make sure you grab the stone off of the defeated boss, and then grab yourself one of the smithing stones 1 in order to upgrade it to +2, hopefully on the very first day. This is going to give you some great damage, help you to tear through the enemies faster, and just make everything a lot smoother when you plan with your group and try and take out the enemies. As for the relics, like I said, this is going to be your bread and butter for your build, and the 3 main ones you're going to be after is going to be anything with these modifiers on right here. My ones are far from perfect, in fact So 2 of them are kind of on the not quite awful but not great side, but the main things you're going to be looking for is going to be your starting skill to be Eruption, so make sure that's on one of your relics. Then after that you're going to want one that says taking attacks improves your attack power, and this is going to happen very often, especially whenever you're using your skill move. And then finally, if you've got it, make sure you use the torn braided cord, as this is going to give you a little bit of extra damage whenever you are using your skill move Retaliate, as well as giving you a bit of extra damage as standard with your strength +3. Like I said, these are far from perfect though, so if you did want to change things up a little bit, you very well could do, and you'll actually have 4 slots left available, so hopefully you'll have some better rolls than I've managed to get here. Now you may be thinking, why have I not enhanced it with fire damage? You can well do that, but on my testing I found that actually increasing your damage overall worked better most times, and instead I was hoping to get a bit of plus fire damage when I was going into the runs and grabbing some of the gear items as I was playing through the expeditions. Again, like I said, you will have some free slots, so hopefully you've got some better relics than I have. A few great ones to look out for would be things that enhance your damage overall, because that's really going to help you out to take down those tough bosses, but probably the best one, if you can manage to find it, with the modifiers I said earlier, in the post damage attacks that give back health, is probably going to be your absolute best one to put in slot. This is going to help you with your survivability massively, and although it's not essential for the build, it can really help you out in order to take on the toughest foes. After that, anything to do with Vigour is absolutely perfect, as well as physical attack up, fire damage up, skill cooldown, damage with great axes, which is probably one of the best in slots if you're going for high damage, as well as any other ones that can really help you out of your runs overall, such as FP regained on great axe hit, or just any way to get back FP in general. Now remember, when you are playing this build, you're going to do some nice attacks that dish out a whole bunch of damage, but whenever you've got a boss that's standing a little bit more on the steel side, try and chuck down your Eruption so that they've got some damage over time to them, then go on with your physical attacks, and if you want to jump in with some jumping heavy attacks, that will also work out perfect because you do some really significant damage that way. When things are on the floor though, I like to use a couple of Eruptions just to make sure they've got an area effect on them, as well as dishing out damage afterwards, and with the right team setup you can see yourself taking down the biggest foes very easily and fast this way, especially if you're lucky and they're weak to fire or such. Now remember, when you are playing these expedition runs, they're going to be very random. The great thing is that you're guaranteed to have your Eruption straight from the start as long as you're actually using it on one of your relics, but after that there's going to be a few things you want to look out for whenever you're defeating enemies or just finding weapons or armaments on the floor in general. One thing I would say is, whenever possible, as with quite a few classes actually, if you can manage to get any kind of negation, that's going to help you out massively throughout your runs, and on a tanky build such as this, one that's going to be completely up close and personal, you're going to want to focus on that probably more than anything else. So if you can get any kind of damage negation, magic damage negation, or just anything that's going to help your HP to stick around, it's well worth picking up whenever possible. On top of that though, don't forget anything that raises your fire damage or your physical damage is going to be a must, as well as anything that can grab yourself some FP recovery. You'll probably want to watch out for things like your Starlight Shards, just in case you do need to replenish your FP during those longer boss fights, and if you can grab yourself some Cooked Crab or anything that's going to up your damage mitigation again, that can pretty much come in handy any time. Now when you are defeating bosses and you've got the choice to pick up some of those passives, some ones that are well worth picking up, again anything to do with damage mitigation, especially your physical damage, is going to be a must. Then one that I think is really underrated, and that's going to be your improved flask restoration, because of how much HP we get as Raider as we start to level up, especially if you're hitting 13, 14 and 15 levels. Again, like I said earlier, reduced FP consumption is absolutely amazing. If you can get that, it's definitely worth having, but a few other ones that are notable, it's going to be a few things like your stamina regen whenever you can, and of course if you're able to get some improved stance breaking, that can work hand in hand with this build as well, allowing you to do some great critical damage, knock things down easily, and just help your teammates out in order to break enemy stances and just dish out more damage overall to tough enemies when they're in a more susceptible state. Overall though, this is one of my favourite classes in the game, and just a really fun, enjoyable build to play that can take out all bosses, but absolutely excels on the kind of larger ones, and any time they're able to stick around for a little while, especially in that pool of lava, allowing you and your team to dish out a whole bunch of damage nice and fast. But yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch more content away from me, including some relics and relic modifiers that you should definitely be looking out for, because they're kind of a little bit on the game breaking or at least very, very powerful side. But as always, for all things gaming, take care. I'll see you on the next day.